Greetings and welcome to this episode of the Heal and Restore podcast with your host, me, Randy, and of course, the hostess with the mostest, my beautiful wife, Cathy, as always.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello, hello. Well, it's been an exciting journey with all this marriage talk we've been doing lately, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it's been a lot of good subjects.
Yeah.
Right? I know on TikTok, people are really loving.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of good views and really a lot of good likes on that. But today we're going to dive into the real conversations, another real conversation, I should say, that help us grow and strengthen our relationships. So that's what's really 100%. Important. Yeah. But today specifically, as we've been doing all along, we're going to talk a little bit more about the common tension
very
in marriage.
Important. Very important.
And that is how to balance independence and togetherness without drifting apart or feeling smothered. You know, sometimes that can be a delicate dance, but it's powerful when the couples can do it right. When we can come together and we can actually make it work.
Yeah, it's very important. And in our relationship, when we were able to make that switch, more so myself, it really enhanced our relationship.
Well, yeah, definitely it enhanced our relationship because you shifted, which kind of gave me the space to do it as well.
Yes, exactly.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Little bit about that. So, you know, we want to start off with why does balance matter? Why do we have to have balance in our marriage or in our relationship? Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk about a couple different things here. We're going to talk about independence and togetherness.
Right.
So what is independence?
Independence is personal autonomy, which means the capacity for self-determination, the capacity to be yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And helps us identify growth.
Identify who we are, and how we grow and who we are. I think that's the biggest key.
It's about full identity and about growth. Both of those things.
Yeah, that's really good. Right. And then what would togetherness be?
Togetherness is more of an emotional connection, shared goals, and companionship.
That's something that I think we've worked really good at.
Right. And when we talk about excessive independence, what that does is that can create emotional distance between the two of us. We feel like we're overwhelmed, like we're constantly being pushed away, or we're constantly being loved on, and why this, and let's do this, and it's just like there's no emotional.
Well, that's the emotional independence. Where you want to just be by yourself and you don't want to connect.
Right,
I think
exactly.
That's the difference.
That's exactly that emotional independence that we need as human beings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice that Cathy loves me, and I love her, but we give each other our own independence, right?
Yeah.
I'm not all over.
But excessive independence, excessive independence is just not spending time together.
Right.
It's completely, to me, it's avoidance. It's avoidance in the relationship.
Exactly.
And then the excessive togetherness is more of like what you're talking about, where it can be a codependent.
Right.
It can lead to codependency. It can lead to resentments. Right. And honestly, I can share a little bit about that. When it comes to that, but you know, when we talk about shared independence, or when we talk about our independence and excessive independence, that can be just, again, like we said, not spending time together and not having that interpersonal connection. Right. But for me, I'll just kind of jump on that one. That excessive togetherness, I kind of grew up thinking that you did in my mind that you do everything with your spouse, that everything should be done together. But it got to a point where I was completely dependent on you,
right,
for my happiness. And in that process, I lost myself.
Right.
And so I think it's really important to be able to understand the healthy togetherness, not the excessive togetherness. Exactly. It's finding a balance in that. And so that's why having a balance in these two areas is really important in a relationship.
Exactly. And her losing herself and relying on me for her happiness was a result of me trying to control things in our marriage as a result of my past trauma.
Right. No, that's true. But at the same time, I began to build the resentments.
Right.
Over time. It wasn't something right away. At first I thought, oh, he just likes me, he loves me, it's all great, until it gets real heavy.
Right.
And that's where we went.
On Kathy's part of that, remember, we got to look at what's our part in all this. Kathy enabled a lot of it for many years.
And like I said, because growing up, I thought that's what a relationship should look like.
Right, exactly.
And so I had a misconception of what togetherness was supposed to look like.
And I think on my part too, again, it was overcompensation.
Yeah.
Again, for what I saw growing up and the way I grew up.
No, absolutely.
I was overcompensating, trying to get that oneness with Kathy to a point of pushing her away.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. So how do we know if we're out of balance? So we're going to go over a few signs that might lead you to think, maybe my relationship is a little bit out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so here are some red flags. Why don't you share some of these red flags?
So one of them is, and this is, I'm going to give a good example of this, is you feel guilty for wanting alone time. Mm-hmm. Right? You feel guilty for wanting alone time. So example of that is this, and this is a real life example, right? I was one that I could go away for a week on a hunting trip, do whatever I wanted, but I never allowed Kathy to have her independence and her freedom. Right? And I heard a pastor say one time, if you've got your wife's wings tied, it's time to cut them, cut the strings. And when I did that, Kathy wanted to go to see her sister in New York. And I had just gotten recovery, and then this was, about 6 years into it when this all started happening. Little things happened before that, but this was a big major thing. I said, go ahead and go. And she was like, are you sure?
Right.
Are you sure? Even the day I took her to the airport.
Right. But I felt guilty for being okay with that.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you that there was deep buried inside me that longing to be able to do that for a long time.
Right.
And so I would just push that, stuff it down.
Right.
No, I can't do this. It's not okay. This is not what relationships look like. So I would stuff that down so that when it did come time where my wings were clipped and you said go, I was very uncomfortable and almost felt guilty for thinking, is this okay, that I could really do something like this?
And then the other part about that is I wasn't constantly calling her or texting her.
No, that's true.
We set that.
We worked through that. That was a tough one to work through.
But it's like, we'll talk in the evening, or if you want to call me in the middle of the day or whatever. We can do
honestly, that helped me to lift some of that guilt for doing that, for being on my own and wanting to do something for myself.
So, but I want to say something. This is how far she has come, right? Just recently, our niece was graduating from high school, right? And you gonna go, Randy? Do you not want to go? Blah 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 blah. And I says, no, we got the pup. I'm gonna stay home with the pup. I just want you to go. She didn't even hesitate. She got online. So go ahead and get your airline ticket. She got online, right? And got her airline ticket and had a great time with her sister and her niece and a few other women that were there. And, she loved it. Now, go back to New York just for a minute. I will tell you this, it was not easy for me because she was across the country. And I struggled, but I was able to work through it. Right? I really was. But it was a good lesson for me to allow her to, hey, you deserve freedom.
Yeah.
Go have fun with your sister.
Yeah.
And I would talk myself, a lot of times I have to talk my way. Look, if she's going to do something, you got no control over it. Your wife loves you. She's with her sister.
Don't you know who my husband is?
I mean, I had to, but I did it and it worked.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is that I've learned, I had a problem with trust. As much as I trusted Kathy when we first started getting married, it's like that saying, Paul said, God, I believe, but help me with my unbelief.
Yeah,
that's kind of where I was at.
That's good. And then another area could be a red flag of your of imbalance in your relationship is that if you've lost your sense of self. Hello, that was me. I didn't know who I was without Randy for a long time, and it wasn't until we got into recovery and I started working on some of these things, whether it was through step study, and then eventually I think where the bigger aha moment came is when I can just think about it. When I was able to write out my testimony There's so much truth to when we put things on paper, and it brings reality and everything into perspective. And it was through writing out my testimony that I realized just how dependent I had become on him and how imbalanced we were in the time that we spent together and how I was feeling towards him. But once I put that on paper and that very first time I spoke it, a lot of that lifted, and the burden was no longer there. So if you feel like you've lost yourself or a sense of yourself, it could be a red flag that your relationship is in balance if you don't have that autonomy of who you are.
Right.
And then the other one is when one partner feels left out or neglected. That can happen easily as well. And so I don't know that I've ever felt left out, to be honest, transparent here. Back before recovery, it was almost like, oh, okay, he's going on a hunting trip. I don't have to keep all these balls in the air. But I never really felt left out. But that definitely, if you're feeling left out or you're not participating in the things that your spouse likes to do, or not even that they like to do, just spending time with them, it might be a red flag that your relationship's out of balance.
Here's another thing that Cathy didn't say. I'm surprised she didn't. Is that when we get in recovery, again, you've heard me say this. What is recovery? It's regaining something we've lost.
Yeah.
So in recovery, what are we regaining? We are regaining our true self, the person that God created, right?
Yeah.
So one thing Cathy, she voiced it to me one time, and she voiced it to a group, I think. She was afraid of who she was going to become in recovery.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was kind of the same way. Who am I going to become in recovery, right?
Yeah.
Am I going to look at Cathy one morning and say, what did I do? I didn't do none of that. But that does happen in recovery a lot, right?
You just don't know.
Especially when both spouses aren't on the same page.
Yeah.
Recovery. Yeah. So that's another fear. Who am I going to become through all this?
Right. If I find my independence.
Right.
Yeah.
And generally, you're going to become a much better. Cathy would say
much better version of yourself. Definitely.
Cathy would say this when we speak places. All I ever wanted was the Randy I married back. Yeah. That's what I wanted back.
Yeah.
And she goes, I got that and so much more.
Yeah. And then another red flag, this one is so common, is that major decisions are made without a discussion.
Right.
Whether it's financial, like buying a car, planning a vacation, this is when you know things are in balance. It's like you come home and said, oh, by the way, I just put a down payment on a brand new car. I hope you don't mind. That's not that's not healthy at all. So, that is definitely a red flag of an imbalance, that your relationship may be imbalanced.
Here's a real life one I just thought of, right? I worked for a guy for 10 years. I was the number one guy in construction. Guy was a jerk, right? Unappreciative, lied through his teeth a lot. And I got fed up with it one day, and I quit. Didn't talk to Cathy. I just quit. And I think I came home that night, told Cathy I quit. We're going to move to the desert, and I'm going to start my own business. I didn't have that discussion with Cathy.
Hello.
This is what we're doing, right? Because I am the man of the house. After all, you got to listen to what I say.
Yeah.
And fortunately, it was a good move because we were sitting one day at a restaurant, and it was the weather reminded me of the beach where I grew up. I love the beach. And so Cathy, I go, man, what was I running from? I don't understand why I ran away from that. She goes, Randy, we weren't running from, we ran to. I didn't realize it, but we ran to Coachella Valley, which was a huge recovery community that I was unaware of. Now, it took me from 1990 to 2006 to get in recovery. But so that's
good. And one thing that I just was thinking about too, as you're talking and sharing that story, is another reason that major decisions are made without discussion, especially when it comes to finances. Finances is one of the hardest conversations for couples to have. And so those of us, myself is one, that make decisions without consulting with our partner, a lot of times it's because we're trying to avoid conflict.
Right.
And so a lot of times people will make decisions without that discussion because they're not good at conflict and they're not good at conflict resolution. So they just do it and it's like worry about the consequences later.
And plus when they again, it goes back to childhood,
Mhm.
unresolved childhood issues, because maybe they tried doing these discussions when they were a kid, and
Got
mom,
shut
dad,
down.
and they got shut down. You're
Yeah.
stupid. Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is where I want to point this out. We ask people, what do you think the number one reason for divorce is?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, what's the answer they give?
Mm-hmm.
Finances, right?
Yeah.
But think about this. 98% of divorces
Yeah.
is due to poor communication,
Absolutely.
which ties into this whole thing we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that, another red flag is when communication becomes task based, checking a box, and not heart based, where your heart is not into the communication. You're just doing it because you're supposed to do it, or this is what people say to do. You're not really connecting with your heart.
And the difference between task-oriented and heart-based is that in a task-oriented, you can become very defensive. You become very harsh in your communication.
Mm-hmm. You're
right?
like living in a box.
Right. You live in a box, and it's like you're afraid. So I've just got to have this conversation, and it can be very one-sided,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Where the heart-based is, hey, honey, we need to sit down. I would like to sit down with you. We have some decisions to make, and I want us to be clear and at least have this conversation. We might not agree on everything.
And we may not have a decision tonight.
Yeah, we might not have to make a decision right now, but we need to start thinking about this. And if we don't agree on something, then let's sit down again. Let's figure out a compromise that we can, so we can make all this work in the future.
Right. Yeah, that's good. So here's kind of a discussion prompt that comes to mind is, what does healthy independence look like within a committed relationship?
Right.
What does it look like, honey?
It's number one, that heart-based communication.
Mm-hmm, that's
right?
good.
That's the most important thing that you got to have. It requires patience. It requires vulnerability, which a lot of people are scared to death
to speak what they need to speak. Right? Yeah.
It requires openness, and it requires honesty. Mm-hmm. Now, oftentimes we don't want to talk about things that, especially as a man, mm-hmm. that are going to appear to make us look weak. Right. So therefore, if I'm not taking control of this conversation, I'm the weak one as a man. And that's not true at all, right?
That's really good.
Cathy, I say it all the time, and I'll never stop saying this. Only a weak person, a weak man, hides their weaknesses through intimidation, right? Manipulation, harsh talking. But it takes a truly strong and courageous man or person to talk with vulnerability about whatever the situation might be, about how they're feeling.
That's good.
Right?
That's good.
So this is really critical. Yeah. Okay.
So what do we got to do to find the right rhythm? We've got some tools and tips that are going to help you through that. But these are things that we talk regularly weekly with our clients. So, one of the biggest things is scheduling intentional time together. Life does get busy.
Well, Cathy, we're too busy. We got the kids, I got work, I got this, I got that.
Ministry, you've got church, you got this. But you know what? Even little simple things like weekly check-ins. It could be a date night. It doesn't have to be every day of the week or once a week. It could be every other week. Maybe some shared projects. Some of the things that I really like to do is our shared projects. It's like, okay, and I've gone as far as putting this on the calendar because I want to be that intentional about our time together. Is I'll put on there, like maybe it was a Saturday, clean the garage. Yes, that sounds boring and horrible, but I was being intentional about putting a plan together to where we can spend time together. The other thing I love is encourage personal growth through hobbies, through friendships, therapy, fitness, whatever that looks like. For us personally, now we're at a new stage in our life. Fitness is kind of I'm going to admit it here. Fitness is kind of becoming something I'm enjoying. Yes. 2 to 3 days a week, we get to go to the gym together and we work out together. Now, talk about the independence and the togetherness and the emotional connection of all that. I enjoy that, but I also am able to say, I'm bored now. I don't want to do this anymore. And you'll just go about your business. Yeah. It doesn't stop you from completing the workout you intend to do.
Yeah, I've allowed Cathy, because she's in the gym.
Yeah, that's a big win right there.
I know my wife, and I don't want to discourage her in any way from ever coming to the gym with me. So when she says, I'm done, right, or I'm sore, whatever, it's like, she'll do at least 3 to 4 exercises in the gym, along with some cardio. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'm just glad you did what you did, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that you pushing yourself each time a little bit further. I'm not going to stop her and discourage her.
No,
from
no,
this.
no. You've been really good about that, so I appreciate that.
And I don't know if you're talking about the hobbies, like
Yeah,
my
the
cycling,
hobbies. Yeah,
right?
that's exactly where I was going to go.
Kathy, I talked to her. Why don't you come riding with me? I don't want to get on those skinny wheels.
Nope,
right?
no
So
desire.
this is the important part, though, right? She doesn't discourage me from it, and she is very supportive of my cycling. Even when I rode across America,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't say you're crazy or anything like that, right? And the other thing is, when we were in our old home area, old hometown, right? She was very much a part of my cycling group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was fun.
She would come down once in a while to have coffee with us. Mostly that was at her work time, so when she could, she would just stop by and say hi. But when we would go to different rides, she was always there. When we would plan a group thing, down on the coast or wherever, just
A group ride,
just
yeah.
a group ride away from the desert, she was always part of it. In fact, I became like, who are you, Randy? When my wife was there, right?
Yeah, so personal growth,
Right.
encouraging that personal growth. And the thing is, the other thing on that is friendships. We have friends that are friends together.
Right.
I have girlfriends that are my friends. You have some guy friends that are your guy friends.
But we know these friends.
We know each
There's
other's
no
friends.
secret friendships.
Yeah, there's no secret friendships. But I guess what I'm saying is that you've gotten way better at saying, yeah, go out and have lunch with so and so, and it doesn't bother you.
Right.
Would we like more friends? Of course, we would like more friends. But that's the beauty, that we're both individuals in that sense, and we both have different desires in relationships with guy friends and with girlfriends. And so I feel like you've encouraged me really well over this last several years, especially moving here, that I have an opportunity to where I say, hey, is there anything on the calendar? I would like to go meet so-and-so for coffee.
No.
And so I've been able to do that. And that, what that does is it makes me desire a closer relationship with you.
And the key to all of that for me is a couple things. I trust Kathy 100%. But more importantly, Kathy is my best friend.
Yeah.
Kathy is my partner, right? She's everything to me. I love her. I know that I'm her best friend. I know that she loves me. I know she feels very safe with me.
Yeah, and that's the other part of this too, is creating emotional safety.
Yes.
So that both partners can be themselves,
Right.
so that we can truly be who we are meant to be. And so we have worked really hard at creating that safe space for each other.
And the other thing that's very, 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 very important to look at is, like, I hunt and fish, and Kathy has never denied any of the times I've gone to do these things.
Because I know that it brings you joy.
But the more important thing that I want people to look at is, don't be so selfish and self-centered that because your wife's allowing you to do these trips. Right? Now, wives, don't be nagging at him and saying derogatory statements to him when he leaves, or husbands with your wife. But support
Embrace
him.
it, yeah.
Embrace it. If you do that, right, then husbands, you darn well better be giving your wife the same courtesy.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a couple questions here that I think are great questions. They're just kind of like check-in questions to make sure that you are finding the right rhythm in the balance here. So one of them would be is, do you feel like I'm staying connected? There was a period of time where I felt like I was losing you.
Well,
I would ask you questions like, not one time, there's been times over the years where I just feel like you got a little distance.
Right.
And so I'd say, I feel like I'm losing you. And you would always respond with, no, I'm okay. I'm just feeling, I'm in a little slump. I'm in a little pit right now, but I'll get through it.
But if I said, yeah, I'm really struggling right now, she would go, important wives or husbands, didn't try to fix me, says, what can I do to help you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I would say, you know what, nothing, or just be there for me.
Yeah.
Right? Just support
no, that's
me
good.
through this.
Yeah. So I think that instead of me just getting into that pit of like, oh, what did I do wrong? Or why is he upset? I just connected with him in a way that was healthy for me and healthy for you.
And that's a good point, is that she, and again, these were not accusational statements. They
Right.
were curious questions, which is what we learned how to ask,
Yeah, no, that's really good.
And I thought my thought train just got blown up again. Darn it! But I never took it as such.
No.
Right? I never.
It was inviting. We're connecting.
Yeah, exactly.
Bringing us closer together, and I think that's the key to that.
And here's what it is this: you asking me that question. I think a lot of times you could have been asking it more for yourself, because then it's like, no, babe, I'm okay. So that takes the burden off of your shoulders.
Right.
That what did I do wrong now?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about that a lot with our couple. So that takes the burden off your shoulders. No, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's good.
Yeah.
And another question you can ask too is: are there areas where you'd like more support or more space?
Yeah.
Have those conversations, and curious questions create really good, healthy dialogue.
I had a conversation with Cathy the other day about some things that I'm going through and how I think and how I'm feeling. And go back down, please. And Cathy was giving me some feedback, and I didn't want feedback, right? And I just said, just support me, right? Just be there for me. I go, I'm going to work through this. I know all the tools, because she's famous for this, and she's right. What do we tell our clients?
Right.
Oh, God. Right. But I do think about all that, and sometimes I am stubborn, but it was the vulnerability on my part to say, Cathy, I'm not looking for advice. I know what to do. I just need to say it out loud, right?
That's good.
So that's a way of saying me in a very loving, supportive way. I just need more space right now while I'm talking about this stuff.
That's good. I love that. And if you're looking at this from a faith-based perspective, I love this in Mark 10:8. This is when Jesus is speaking.
In part, this says.
In part, he just says, and two become one. Now, that doesn't mean losing your individuality at all. God designed each of us with a purpose. Each of us have our own personality and the freedom in the relationship.
Right.
And, thank goodness we're each individual, because if two of us were exactly the same in a relationship, it could be dangerous.
Our therapist said, you guys will probably kill yourself if you're the same.
Yeah, so, we're individuals, and we want to embrace that, and then invite that individuality of your spouse or your partner into your world, into your space.
And I'm going to say this, as hard as you might be having a hard time believing this, it's understandable, right? It's like, come on, it's society. This is completely against what society says, right? However, this is what I'm going to tell you. We, both of us, and I did it by my lead, and I'm being very humble with that. When we started making these changes and implementing them on a consistent basis over long periods of time, our relationship has absolutely thrived and exploded.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. Yeah, we had to make that changes.
We're not perfect.
No.
We have our times, but...
we still... But the vulnerability has been much easier to get to.
Yes.
Let's put it that way, as a result of that. So here's a couple things to think about. This is for your, as the listener, reflection. And it could be a journal prompt too. So here's what we're going to encourage you to do. Reflect on your journal prompting this week. And here's a couple things that you can maybe ask yourself that will lead you into your journal writing. In your marriage, do you tend to lean more towards independence or togetherness?
And be honest about that.
Yeah. And then the other question is, what's one way you can lean in without losing yourself? So those are some deep questions. I'm going to repeat them because I want you to have the opportunity to write them down if you need to. So the question for journal prompting would be, in your marriage, do you tend to lean more towards independence or togetherness? And what's one way you can lean in without losing yourself?
And if you have troubles answering those questions, they were very well defined throughout this podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So good journal prompting for this.
Right.
And then we have a call to action this week too. I'm really enjoying our call to actions. We've got a little bit more creative with them. So here's a couple things you can do. Try a togetherness check-in this week. And here's what you want to ask your partner or your spouse. How connected do you feel with me this week?
Good question. Really good question. And on that question, If they say, I feel a little disconnected this week from you, okay, can you tell me more about that?
Be open to receive. Yeah.
Don't discount it. Don't say, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. No,
Discount,
no.
defend. Be open. Be humble enough to receive the response that you're going to get.
Remember, we're talking about vulnerability and honesty here. And if we're negating when our partner, we ask that question, and we're negating our partner's feelings, they're going to go right back into that shell. They're not going to be speaking anymore, right? Remember, a lot of people, whether they realize it or not, they're bringing their unresolved childhood issues or traumas into their marriage. So we want to break that cycle, right?
Absolutely.
By not negating their feelings, but by validating them and asking the curious question. Tell me more about that. Tell me what that looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and then be willing to look at it yourself.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So you can. And then ask your partner or spouse, what can I do to help you to change that feeling?
Yeah.
And it might just be, it's just me right now. I love you very much. I'm not going nowhere. It's just the way I feel right now. Just give me a little more time to figure this out. Or, you know what, honey? I could really use a big hug right now.
Yeah.
And just your patience and your love through all this is going to really make me feel good.
Yeah. And here's a second check-in question you can ask. And everything that Randy just said would apply here too. Is, do you feel that you have enough space to grow personally?
Right.
And if not, what do you need? Be willing to look at what do you need if you don't feel like you have enough space. So it's just about being patient, being vulnerable, being humble, and being honest in these conversations.
Cathy is good at that, right? On the other hand, I recognize a lot of my, I'll just say, controlling issues over Cathy. And she didn't have to say a lot of that to me because I had already recognized it. And I began making the changes way before.
It's about being aware. Once these things are presented and once these things are in your spirit, you're aware of them, you can start making those changes.
Yes.
So that's good. So we have another little worksheet that that we would love to share with you. And in this worksheet, it's going to be our Healthy Balance Marriage Worksheet.
Healthy Marriage Balance Worksheet.
Healthy Marriage Balance Worksheet. Sorry, I read that backwards. And you can get that by emailing us at healandrestorecounseling@gmail.com. That's healandrestorecounseling@gmail.com. And we will send you a copy of that. And it's got about 4 or 5 questions on there. They're great. They're 4 or 5 categories with a few questions under each category that will help you in getting that balance back into your marriage.
Just email us, say we like a copy of the Healthy Marriage Balance Worksheet.
Yep,
and we'll be glad
absolutely.
to send it to you. No cost.
Nope.
Our gift to you.
Our gift to you. And then just as a reminder, we would love for you to, if you haven't already subscribed, leave a review about our podcast. If there's anything you'd like to hear, anything that you would like to see improvement on. And be sure to share this episode or any of our episodes with any other couples that might be navigating some of these same areas that you're listening to today. So as we finish out this subject, just remember that finding the right balance between independence and togetherness, it isn't all about compromise. It's about a connection with freedom.
Yes.
So when both exist, your relationship can thrive without losing what makes each of you whole. And I love that. I love that.
So, as we close out this episode,
yes.
we'd like to invite you to check out our books on Amazon.
Whoa, what books do we got? We got quite a few.
We've got quite a few, right? The first one is Healing the Wounded Child Within, it's written by me, sharing the healing from the pain of abuse.
Yep.
Okay.
We also have How to Heal and Restore Your Marriage, and that's a 4-step process to restore the most important relationship.
Yep. Then we got Renewing Bonds, 7 Steps to Restoring Your Relationship.
And the most recent one that we've written is Hearts Reunited, that's Steps to Restore Love and Intimacy.
Right? And those are all how to heal and restore your marriage. Well, our marriage is good, and we don't need. Excuse me.
We can always enhance our marriages.
Always enhance our marriages.
Yeah.
Right. Then I also wrote a book called it's a 30-day devotional to wholeness.
Yeah, that's been a really key in a lot of relationships. It gives you 30 days of just small reading and prompting.
And at the end of every devotional, there's 3 or 4 contemplative questions you can answer. And we suggest reading it with your spouse, and you guys can. That's one way you can start engaging in healthy communication.
Healthy communication,
right?
yeah. And just released is Randy's recent book. It's called The Healing Path, and it's a survivor's guide to healing from abuse. It's kind of a follow-up of his Healing the Wounded Child Within.
Yeah.
It really gives you some direction and guidance to healing through your abuse and from your abuse. And all of these books can be found on Amazon or at our website, which is www.healandrestorecounseling.com. It's healandrestorecounseling.com, so you can check them out there. And do you want to talk about our discovery session? This is something that we have found has been very beneficial to our client base.
Matter of fact, I don't think we've had anybody not sign up. One or two.
We've had a couple. We've had a couple, and which is absolutely okay.
Perfectly
if we're
fine.
not the right fit, we're not the right fit.
But that's why we do this.
Yeah, and this is why we do this. The whole purpose of this, it's a 1 hour no cost discovery session to you. And we do this because we want to hear about you and what you're looking for in coaches. And we want to be able to share a little bit about our journey, and we want to make sure it is a right fit. Because if it's not a right fit, it's not a right fit, and that's okay.
Right. And we know from testimonies that a lot of people have been with people that were not a right fit and actually did more harm. So we're here. Our job is we want to help you enhance your relationship. If it's addiction or trauma, we want to help you work through those issues. Yeah. Very loving way. Yeah. Very kind way. We're not condemning. We're not judgmental. We accept you where you're at.
Exactly.
And who you are at the moment.
Yeah, so I think it's important to know that, not only do we do marriage or relationship coaching, we do individual coaching as well. We've got a couple of individuals right now, both men and women, that are healing from their own experiences, whether it be addiction, whether it be family dynamics, whatever that might look like.
Trauma, whatever.
Yeah, so we are definitely here to help anybody and everybody. You don't have to be a couple to check into our services. So if you're interested in that 1 hour discovery session, please go to our website at healandrestorecounseling.com. You can sign up for your free, no cost, complimentary 1 hour discovery session.
Yeah, or they can just shoot us an individual email.
Yeah, that's fine too. Or if you have our contact information, you can call us.
However you got to get to us. We're here.
Definitely.
All right.
Yeah,
good.
That's good stuff.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening to.
Yes, absolutely.
I hope you're enjoying these topics that we're coming up with lately.
And please share this with everybody.
Yeah.
Somebody out there, whether you think they need it or not, does need it.
We never know.
We never know. Okay. Yeah. So remember this: if nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does.
Cathy does.
But more importantly, God does. Be blessed, everybody. Have a fabulous week.
Have a great week.